Hello and welcome. I am Jess Cattmans, guided by Equus, and this is your Horse Wisdom Insights for the week of January 18th. I'm here with my mare and foal herd, I guess you could call it. And there's just been so much that has come to me, I want to say in the last week, but over the last couple weeks for sure, in relationship to soul retrieval and the journey we take as a soul when we incarnate here, in relationship to trauma and wounds and our healing and what inspires us, and all of these pieces of the puzzle that bring us this experience of why our lives happen the way they have, and the underlying purpose of what we're here to do through the healing of that. So just taking a breath on all of that, and I'm really excited to share just everything that I've learned and discovered along the way, and to support you so that you can find your own soul purpose path and the healing. And then when you do that, you are able to offer your gifts through your own experience of healing yourself out into the world, and that's how we become the change that we wish to see in the world, is through utilizing these gifts that are often buried within our wounds, to really enliven the soul and spirit connection within us. And so this week, actually, there's not really a word, I guess, but I will go back to last week, and this idea of letting go, or going back to grazing, is kind of a familiar term in this work with horses, or in horses in general, because horses or animals come together. They release tension after a trauma by shaking or moving their body, and then they return to grazing. Well, we as humans, growing up in this society that we grow up in, have a lot of traumas that we haven't moved through our body, and so they get stuck within us. And this work with the horses, for me anyways, and this idea of healing through with in assistance guided by horses, is about uncovering and recovering those parts of our soul that were fragmented or buried or repressed, so that we can become more of a whole human being. And it's not through the doing, it's through the being who we are that we inspire and help others reconnect to who they are. Where was I going with this? And just really, finally, I've found this sense of joy and purposeful joy back. And so my mind is like going 1,000 thoughts a minute to share all of this with you guys. So this idea of letting go. And it was kind of brought to my attention through a Facebook post that just talked about stop being in your head so much, go back to grazing like the horses do. Well, when we're operating from this unconscious belief or trapped emotion that exists within us, going back to grazing is actually bypassing that and keeping it buried within us, rather than addressing it as we need to do as a human. If we as humans grew up and knew how to release trauma from our body, then we wouldn't have all of these pains and aches, emotional and physical and mental, and anguish and suffering, because we're holding that all inside of us, ours as well as the collectives. Because what is the collectives is ours if we haven't come to terms with it or healed ourselves through the experience of it. And again, I'm excited to share more about this whole process and journey of that, which is what I've been doing, but I've been doing it in a way that I felt ashamed and guilty of part of my life. And so I was actually not really doing it from this place of joy. And another piece around that is that you can't become the witness and the teller of a story if you're still in the story, because you're still affected by the story. So it's this ability to allow yourself to move through the story to gain the wisdom and the insight, which is what I try and do here in this space with the horses on a weekly basis. And sometimes I'm moving through parts of my own story. And for the last couple of weeks, I've kind of been a recluse because I really needed to step back from the outside world and go deep, deep into my own inner world to find these pieces of the puzzle that I knew were there, and yet I hadn't been able to grasp as of yet. And so I offer all of this to you guys because this week it feels like a very empowering week as we gain insight into something that we hadn't fully understood yet. And so the last piece of this, actually I'll get back to the letting go process. So we can't let go of that old story until we fully move it through ourselves to gain the wisdom that exists within the completion of the story itself. And once we have that, then we can let it go. But until we have that understanding on a soul level and recognizing the parts of the story and why we entered into the story in the first place, or how it was that the story became part of our lives, we are still remaining in a state of disempowerment because we haven't received our own sense of personal integrity and power back from experiencing the full completion of the story. So the idea of going back to grazing is fine if you're an animal who doesn't get stuck in stories and hold on to belief systems and emotions and all of these things that become trapped within us, or we're holding on to because we have a fear of letting something go. And that fear is real because if we let it go, it's just going to come back to haunt us. And so it's not even a fear of letting it go. It's a fear of letting the story go because it hasn't come it hasn't become a cycle within us. It hasn't come to completion. And so we fear letting it go because from a soul level perspective, we need that story. We need to be able to process it so we can come to this completion. So I hope you guys are able to follow that. And this week again feels like there's insights that are helping us complete a story that has been part of our lives. And these pieces have kind of been coming in, and they might still be through the month of January as there's more of kind of a, I almost want to say a soul contract that you're recognizing for yourself through the experiences of your life. And so 2020 was really a big year for witnessing this in ourselves and the collective. And so this week, if you have a moment, and you also just might be feeling the rise of all of this within your world, so you don't even need to go back into 2020 because it's still part and present for you, but tune into what it is that you're most feeling about last year and your timeline of where you're at right now, because those emotions are guiding you to a piece of your own personal story that still requires you to come to a level of deeper understanding with. And so I hope that helps you guys this week. And if you need support around this, you know where to find me. I'm right here with these guys. But can also email me, jess@jesscatmans.com. And much love from myself and the horses, and truly I'm looking forward to sharing so much more that these guys have taught and guided me into for my lifetime, because now I feel like I'm on the other side of all of these pieces of this puzzle that I couldn't understand why I was so entangled in. So much love to all of you guys from myself and the horses, and looking forward to being in touch with you and sharing more horse wisdom insight. Take care.